Hello, it's Friday, August 23rd, and this video segment I call My Perspective and Comments. And today I'd like to talk about emotional support animals. And I want to differentiate right from the start. I'm not talking about service animals, and there is a difference. The service animal is one that, for instance, a seeing eye dog, one that assists a blind person. That is a service animal for that handicapped person. What I'm talking about today is the emotional support animal. And that is that someone that may have been to a psychiatrist, a psychologist, regarding an emotional issue, and the help that psychiatrist has advocated is in certain situations is a support animal. And what I'd like to focus on today is the person that wants to travel on an airline. And this segment of the people that have emotional support animals, that has that number of people going on planes and using the transportation system has increased significantly. And because of that increase, there have been some problems with people wanting to bring more and more and different support animals on with them. And that's what I want to talk about right now, is what's been in the news lately. And this has been a chronic issue, and I would bring a few suggestions that might help alleviate some of those issues. But when it comes to the traditional support animal, the dog, for instance, and what they've been finding is situations where the dog urinates or bites on seats, or has issues with in that area. I think the most troubling is people getting bit. Now we're talking about the flying public being affected negatively. So one of my solutions in that area would be to maybe as part of the training for even a service animal, but also the emotional support animal of the dog, would be to muzzle that dog and give training as part of the training for an emotional support animal. Then, because they do go through the training to allow them to be able to go into different situations in public where they know how to act and behave. But going on an airline where there's many people, the interaction there, just a simple muzzle might alleviate, especially the bites. What I'd like to talk about, though, when it comes to the emotional support animal that's been in the news here, I think over the last year, I would say, is the exotic animals that are being requested to be brought on. But I want to focus on two animals right now. One, the miniature pig. Yes, I said it. And two, the miniature horse being allowed on airlines. Now, I want to point out that the bigger airlines in our country, American, Delta, United, Southwest, JetBlue, most of the American airlines do have some stringent guidelines. One, a letter, document from your doctor, and documents from the veterinary stating that some of these behavioral issues that the dog is not exhibiting that, and that the dog or cat or the animal is healthy. So the major airlines in the U.S., but there are some, the smaller carriers are opening it up to these larger animals, like, as I mentioned, the miniature pig and miniature horse. And that brings up a concern of mine. One, they're riding in the public square. So it's not only the emotional person that's needing the animal to fly with them, but let's take a look at what about the individual that's doesn't have that emotional issue. What about the heightened emotional issue that person might have? When we get on planes, our heart rate, I know mine will probably is elevated a little bit, because when you get on a plane there is that aspect of not knowing what could happen if there is a issue with the plane. The takeoff and landings are both can be, with the feel of the takeoff and the touchdown. There are things that go through your mind. So what about the individual? The other individuals on the plane, might they have some emotional issues? Maybe some people don't want to ride and in the plane with some of these larger animals. And two, what about if there is, God forbid, an accident where the plane has to come in and there has to be an emergency exit? And I'm thinking, I don't know if any of you folks are NASCAR fans, but just a week or two ago, Dale Earnhardt Jr. and his wife and child had to make her scurry out of a plane because it had crashed and it caught on fire. Now think about this. These larger animals, I mean, if there's a plane crash and people are trying to get out, these animals affected negatively too. And some might freeze up. And can you imagine trying to pull a 100+ pound miniature horse or miniature pig out when they don't want to go because they're startled? So that poses a problem, because now we're talking about 25, 30 seconds, or if it takes a minute or 2 minutes, those 2 minutes can be life or death. So those are concerns that the public really needs to vocalize, and the Department of Transportation has been open for comments regarding the support animals being allowed on some of the airlines. But I want to kind of transition from there, from that aspect when it comes to psychology and the psychologists. I want to talk about a situation that's going on. I don't know if you folks have heard of Title IX. It's part of the Department of Education, and it's the civil rights, under the Civil Rights, Office of Civil Rights. And what Title IX was designed for is to open up more opportunities for women primarily, but obviously boys and men too, for scholastical opportunities when it comes to sports, and primarily to open up more opportunities for girls and women to be able to compete in more sports and get scholarships in those sports areas. But what has taken place over the last, I would say, probably 2 or 3 years now, is that you have women that are going out and trying to make a NCAA team, and they're getting knocked out because they're competing against boys and men and the men are winning all these trophies and awards and scholarships, and it's not fair. And it almost puts the Title IX on its head and say, now what about if this isn't a joke? that was designed to really open up more opportunities for women, only to have an undercut by men competing against women. So it's definitely become a problem with this whole LGBTQ community that is pushing this, and to try and normalize this situation. And I want to just step back a little bit and take a look at when we start talking about the professionals, psychiatry, psychologists, and what they had called this gender identity disorder. Now, I mean, that's not me talking, but this is the professionals have a name for this this issue, transgenders. But what they did in 2013 is to try and soften it, and I would say more so normalize it, is they changed the name from gender dysphoria. But the bottom line is that now we have women that are getting knocked out of being on an NCAA team because it's being replaced by a man, a boy. And there needs to be, I mean, that's not fair, you know, and we're all about fairness. And a Title IX was, as I said, was an opportunity to open up more opportunities for women to be able to get in more areas of sports and getting scholarships in there. And now it's being undercut by this situation. But I also want to, in keeping in that, moving kind of away from that, and just to put a stamp that this isn't fair. I don't agree with this, and there needs to be something. But I want to talk about also, in line with this, is in Wichita, Kansas, a library board has opened up to have transgender book reading hour in the public library, where kids 4, 5, 6, 7 will come and listen to a transgender read books. But what has just taken place over the last 2 or 3 weeks now is that the board has voted, or is voting, on whether or not to have convicted transgender pedophiles come in to do some of this reading. Now, if that isn't over the top, and if there is an outcry, or there should be an outcry from parents and leaders talking about what is going on in this public school. Now, I want to back up a step and say that it's not just Wichita that library that's opening up to have transgenders come in. In fact, I'm not sure what city or what town, but they had a transgender come in, and what his segment or teaching was for the kids was to do some twerking. Now, come on, folks. I mean, as a society, you know, we're seeing degradation and the eroding away of every moral moorings that we have. I mean, if you look to San Francisco, I mean, what's going on there is totally insane, where you have to, you know, they should be handing out these when you cross the border or into the city of San Francisco, handing you a map, a poop map, because you've got people defecating all over the place right here in public. And if that isn't a sign of a society, or a sign that a society is eroding away, I don't know what is. But it comes back to, as I've mentioned over these last couple of 3 video segments, we really need to, my brothers and sisters in the Lord, to pray ask God to open up the eyes and to really see where we are as a society, and to pray for those that are in leadership, and even those that that have a PhD or doctor's title under their name, that they can be enablers to a delusion where they're trying to normalize something that's not normal. So I would ask that you just join me to continue to pray for our nation, that they see the true healer, the one that can wrap around an individual and help with the emotional trauma that they may be going through, or the identity crisis. In Christ, you can be made whole. Your mind can be renewed. And when we talk about the renewing of the mind to see spiritual things, also the renewing of the mind to think clearly and to not be swallowed up in that delusion. And we know that the enemy can play in that realm of mixing up people and having them under a satanic delusion. And we need to pray that God will break through in those areas. Now that people's eyes will be opened. Now there is a segment that's in the transgender community that are just looking to be able to get into ladies' bathrooms, and they have a very a criminal aspect to this too, and law enforcement needs to be, and people in the community and our lawmakers need to really stand strong to say, wait, there is a bathroom for a man and there's a bathroom for a woman, and it's not how you feel, but it's how you biologically are. If you're biologically a man, you go to the man's room, and if you're biologically a woman, you go to the women's room. And that needs, the legislation needs to be really put into stone, that and it comes down to, we have to write a law saying, yes, boys go to the boys' room and girls go to the girls' room. But if that has to be, and those lawmakers stand strong and say, look, you can threaten to boycott us all you want. We're standing for truth, not delusion. And that's my perspective and comment for today.